Bad alternator or bad battery. 7 signs that tell the difference. Your car won't start, or maybe it starts, but something still feels wrong. The lights look weak. The battery warning light comes on. The engine struggles. And now you're stuck with the same question a lot of drivers ask. Is it the battery or is it the alternator? That question matters because these two parts work together, but they do not fail in the same way. The battery's job is to provide the power needed to start the car. The alternator's job is to keep the battery charged and supply electrical power while the engine is running. So when one of them fails, the symptoms can overlap. And that is why people often replace the wrong part first. In this video, I'll show you 7 signs that help you tell the difference between a bad battery and a bad alternator. We'll go from the most obvious clues to the more hidden ones. And by the end, you'll have a much better idea what to check first. Let's get into it. Sign number 1, how the car behaves before starting. This is one of the best places to begin. If the battery is weak, the most common sign is slow cranking. You turn the key or press the start button and the engine turns over slowly. It sounds weak, heavy, tired. Sometimes you hear rapid clicking, sometimes just one click, with no strong crank at all. That usually points more toward the battery, especially if the problem shows up after the car has been sitting overnight. A bad alternator can also lead to a weak start, but usually only after it has already failed to keep the battery charged. So if the main symptom is slow crank after sitting, think battery first. Sign number 2, what happens after the engine starts? This is where the alternator starts to separate itself. A weak battery mostly affects starting, but once the car's running, the alternator should take over and power the vehicle. So if the car starts, but then the lights get dim, electrical systems act strange, or the car slowly loses power while driving, that points much more toward the alternator. This is one of the biggest differences. A battery usually causes trouble before the engine starts. An alternator often causes trouble after the engine is already running. That timing clue helps a lot. Sign number 3, repeated dead battery. This is where many drivers get fooled. They replace the battery. The car works for a while, then the battery dies again. At that point, people often assume they bought another bad battery. But that repeated pattern often points to the alternator, because if the alternator is not charging properly, it will slowly drain even a good battery. So if the battery keeps going dead again and again, especially after driving, the alternator becomes much more likely. A bad battery can go dead once. But a battery that keeps dying repeatedly often means the charging system is not doing its job. Sign number 4, battery warning light on the dashboard. This warning light confuses a lot of drivers. Many assume it means the battery itself is bad, but in many cases that light is actually warning you about the charging system. And that means alternator, wiring, belt, or related electrical problems. So if the battery light comes on while the engine is running, do not immediately blame the battery. That is a major clue that the alternator may not be charging correctly. And if that light appears along with dim headlights, weak blower fan, or fading electronics, the alternator becomes even more likely. Sign number 5, dim lights and weak accessories. This is one of the classic alternator signs. If the alternator is weak, voltage can drop while driving. And when that happens, electrical accessories begin to show it. You may notice headlights dimming, interior lights flickering, power windows slowing down, the radio cutting out, or the dashboard looking weaker than normal. That usually points much more to the alternator than the battery, because once the car is running, the alternator should be supplying stable power. If it cannot, the whole electrical system begins to feel weak. A battery by itself does not usually create ongoing dimming while the engine is running unless the alternator has already failed to support it. Sign number 6, jump start behavior. This is another helpful clue. If a jump start gets the car running, you still need to ask what happens next. If the car starts after a jump and then runs normally, the battery may simply be weak, discharged, or old. But if it starts after a jump, then later dies again, or starts losing electrical power while driving, that points more toward the alternator. So the jump start itself does not give the full answer. What matters is what happens after. Does the car recover and stay fine, or does the problem come right back? That difference helps tell you which part is more likely failing. Sign number 7, the car stalls while driving or won't stay running. This is one of the strongest alternator clues. A weak battery alone usually causes trouble starting, but once the engine is running, it normally doesn't cause the car to suddenly lose all power by itself. A bad alternator can, because if the alternator stops charging, the car begins running only on battery power, and once that remaining battery power drops too low, the engine may stall, the lights may fade, and the whole vehicle may shut down. This is why a car that dies while driving, or starts and then quickly loses power, often points more clearly to the alternator than the battery. Now, here is something important. These two problems can happen together. A failing alternator can ruin a battery over time, and an old battery can make charging system diagnosis confusing. That is why the smartest approach is not to guess from one symptom alone. Instead, look at the pattern. If the main issue is slow crank, clicking, weak start after sitting, or needing a jump in the morning, think battery first. If the main issue is battery light on while driving, dimming lights, weak accessories, repeated dead battery, or the car dying after it starts, think alternator first. And if possible, test both, because testing is always better than guessing. A weak battery can mislead you, and a weak alternator can destroy a good battery if the real problem is not fixed. So let's quickly recap. A bad battery usually shows itself through slow cranking, clicking, hard starting, and needing frequent jump starts, especially after the car sits. A bad alternator usually shows itself through battery warning light, dimming lights, weak electrical accessories, repeated dead battery, and the car losing power or stalling after it starts. That difference matters, because replacing the wrong part wastes money and often leaves the real problem behind. And now I want to hear from you. What did your car do first? Slow crank, battery light, dim lights, needed a jump, or did it die while driving? Comment below with the exact symptom you noticed first. And if enough people mention the same issue, I'll make the next video on that exact problem.